A foggy morning in a 13th century European town. Church bells are clanging non-stop. From the square, people pour out. A blacksmith still dusted with soot, a carpenter with a saw in hand, bread sellers tugging their kids along. In the middle of the crowd is a wooden cart. On it sits a woman with a crudely shaven head, wrapped in a coarse grey cloak, a board hanging from her neck with one word scrawled on it, adulterer, adulteress. Along the cart's sides, a few young men hang wooden horns and whistle, mocking the husband who stands in a corner of the market with his head down. The theater of punishment has just begun, laughter, jeers, and bells blending into one. But behind that noisy curtain lies an entire world of laws, doctrine, prejudice, and wounds, where adultery isn't just a private lapse, but an offense against the community's order. In the Middle Ages, adultery was treated as a serious crime and condemned by everyone. How exactly did it work? Watch the video to find out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more. Adultery, sin of the flesh, or a crime against the village. In the Middle Ages, a broad label spanning the 5th, 15th centuries, the same act could be judged in two courts. The church court, treating it as sin before God, and the secular court, treating it as a violation of social order, family honor, and marital property. Canon law condemned adulterium as a serious sexual sin, demanding public penance, repentance, fasting, even pilgrimage. Meanwhile, customary law, city statutes, and seigneurial law laid down worldly penalties, flogging, fines, public shaming in the marketplace, even bodily mutilation, all intended to bend the individual back into the community's mold. Nor was adultery defined the same everywhere. In many places, only a married woman who had intercourse outside marriage was branded an adulteress. A married man who strayed if the partner wasn't another man's wife was often labeled merely dissolute. That line didn't just reflect moral judgments, it mirrored property and lineage structures. Children had to be legitimate, dowry secure, and the bloodline undisturbed. The spectacle of humiliation. From the pillory to the reverse procession. Across the era, the most common penalty was public shaming. It wasn't the headsman's blade, but the crowd's gaze that cut the deepest. Pillory and carting. Offenders were tied to the market. Pillory operated through town on a wooden cart, forced to listen as villagers shouted and sang. In parts of France and England, the rituals of Charivari, or the Skimmington rite, turned the whole village into a stage. Pots and pans clanged, fools' masks appeared, wooden horns signaled a cuckolded husband, and mocking verses rang down every alley. No blood had to be spilled, but the din could wipe out a lifetime's honor. Shaven head, grey gown, bare feet. In many parishes, the penitent had to wear a chemise, a plain, undyed shift, go barefoot around the church, and carry a large wax candle while praying. Shaving the head, strip away beauty, especially for women, a cold declaration that she no longer held an honorable place in the community. Badges of shame, horns, strings of bells, a beep or smock worn backward, boards scrawled with adulterer, divided by adulter. These props of folk theater carried their own kind of legal weight. They dragged sin into the light, turning the private into a public lesson. Evidence, rumor, and old law. How did they catch them in the act? Medieval courts had no DNA tests or cameras. What they did have were oaths, rumor, oath helpers, compurgators who vouch on their honor, and the possibility of catching someone red-handed. Caught in bed. Many ordinances let a husband who sees his wife in the act submit proof clothing, witnesses, and demand a swift hearing. Some places even allowed immediate retaliation, but only within tight legal bounds. If he went too far, killing or excessive cruelty, the husband himself could be prosecuted. These rites of anger narrowed over time. Rumor as a weapon. In a small village, who slept with whom wasn't just bedroom business, it was about power, envy, and grudges. A Charivari might target not the guilty, but the disliked. After enough public taunting, people confessed in silence by moving away, changing trades, or cutting ties. The law was one thing, the community another. Church courts wanted confession. Because adultery was treated as a moral offense, many priests looked for an admission in confession. Without it, severe sentences were harder to impose. That's one reason softer humiliations, public shaming, and penance were favored. They bowed a person's head without needing the executioner's blade. Men, women, rich, poor, the uneven scales. Double standards. In many regions, a woman's adultery was judged more harshly. The plain logic was bloodline and property. A child conceived out of wedlock could redirect inheritance away from the proper lineage, so guarding a wife's body became a way of guarding the husband's assets. By contrast, a married man who slept with an unmarried woman was often labeled dissolute rather than treacherous unless he had violated another man's wife. Class associate, noblewomen had families, dowries, and political alliances to protect them. Their affairs might be settled with extra dowry, a strategic marriage, or a church-brokered reconciliation. Poor women, by contrast, were more likely to be turned into a public morality lesson for the entire village. The cuckold, paid to, the wooden horns, weren't hung on the wife but on the husband, and the jeering made men fear adultery no less. His honor was stripped of sanctity, his social standing shaken, his trade soured. Punishing adultery, then, was a way for the system to force both sexes back into the roles it demanded. In the Middle Ages, adultery was punished both by the church, penance, pilgrimage, excommunication, and by secular courts, pillory, flogging, fines, confiscation, and in some places, branding or even cutting off the nose. The death penalty was very rare. Evidence was hard to come by and rumor was rampant, so public shaming became an effective weapon of deterrence. Double standards of gender and class meant women and the poor bore the brunt. In the Islamic world, strict rules of proof made the harshest sentences uncommon. In East Asia, clan and family law punished offenders to safeguard honor and lineage order. In the end, every punishment aimed to protect the common house. Today, centuries on, we're learning to keep our homes with fairer laws, respect for privacy, and empathy, rather than the clanging pots of a humiliating procession.